They called it a small skirmish. That's how the Intergalactic Peace Council described it, just a small conflict on the outer edge of the Altheon system. What they didn't say was that the colony on Rivenfall had over 200,000 people. Teachers, miners, scientists, farmers, ordinary humans trying to build something new, something better. Families who believed in peace. Children who were born under a different sky, never even seeing Earth. Now they were all gone. The attackers didn't leave bodies, no survivors, just a smoking crater where homes used to be and the blackened metal of our flags, torn and shattered. We didn't even get a warning. No declaration, no threat, just silence, and then fire from the skies. At first, Command hesitated. Earth's leaders wanted diplomacy. "We'll investigate," they said. "We'll find out who's responsible." But the people didn't wait. No one wanted to wait. You can't erase a whole colony and expect silence, not from humanity. Within a week, the outer colonies started mobilizing. Civilian ships were retrofitted for battle. Mining vessels were turned into bombers. Private fleets pledged their loyalty to Earth defense. Retired soldiers came back without even being asked. It wasn't organized at first, but rage doesn't need structure to move. And then came the big announcement: Operation Black Sky. Earth's High Command had one message for the galaxy: Rivenfall will be avenged. They gathered the numbers slowly at first. 50,000 warships from the Terran core fleet. Then another 100,000 from the Martian defense rings. Jupiter's orbital docks brought in heavy dreadnoughts. Luna, Saturn's moons, the Kuiper Belt colonies, even distant Centauri Prime. They all sent fleets. Old ships, new ships, stealth bombers, heavy carriers. In 4 months, Earth had a force that made the stars nervous. 700,000 warships, each one armed, manned, and ready. No politics, no excuses. Just one mission: find who did this and make them pay. I remember the day the skies changed. I was on Callisto, watching the defense grid light up. It wasn't fear. It was something else. The feeling that humanity had finally stopped waiting to be stepped on. No more peace talks with people who think peace is weakness. No more tolerance for arrogance from empires that saw us as bugs. They called us backward once, primitive, a species barely crawling off its cradle world. They said we were too emotional, too violent, too unpredictable. Well, now they were about to see what that really meant. The fleet launched in phases. First wave, recon fleets and scout drones. Second wave, battle groups and intercept carriers. Third wave, full assault armadas with enough firepower to make moons crack. But it wasn't just about the numbers. It was about intent. Humanity didn't want a war. They wanted justice. And if justice needed to be carved into the bones of a dozen alien empires, then so be it. One admiral said it best: "We came in peace. Now we come with purpose." The galaxy began to panic. Broadcasts changed overnight. Empires that once ignored Earth started issuing formal statements. Pleas for peace, offers to negotiate, threats disguised as warnings, but no one listened anymore. Because Rivenfall still burned in our minds. Every ship in that 700,000 knew the name. It was written on the hulls, carved into cockpits, burned into the hearts of every pilot and soldier. And as they left Earth's orbit, moving in perfect silence across the void, only one truth remained. One colony fell. Now 700,000 warships move without mercy. The fleet moved like a shadow spreading across the stars, cold, steady, and unstoppable. There was no music, no cheering, just the quiet hum of engines and the cold stare of soldiers who knew what they were going to do. It wasn't revenge for them. It was duty. Someone had made a decision to wipe out Rivenfall. And now, humanity had made a decision in return. Every ship had a name. Some named after lost cities, others after heroes who died without making the history books. My ship was called the Vengeance of Alba. It was a mid-range assault cruiser, nothing fancy, but it had teeth. I was second in command under Captain DeSalle, a woman who never smiled. She was born on Europa and lost her sister in the Rivenfall attack. She didn't talk about it, didn't have to. You could feel it in her silence. When you're part of a fleet that size, 700,000 ships, you'd think you'd feel small, insignificant. But that's not how it felt. It felt like being part of a storm. Like each one of us was a lightning bolt, and the sky was about to break open. The first confirmed target came 3 weeks into the mission. The Nargath Syndicate. They were a minor empire in galactic terms, not big enough to challenge the Council, but not small enough to be ignored. They had a reputation. Smugglers, mercs, slavers. Most of their operations ran through quiet sectors, far from law and justice. That made them bold, arrogant, sloppy. A few of their transmission records were intercepted after Rivenfall, and those logs made one thing clear: they were involved. Maybe not directly, maybe not the only ones, but they supplied the weapons used to turn Rivenfall into ashes. That was enough. The Council hesitated. Again. "Let's verify the information," they said. "Let's not jump to conclusions." But Earth didn't wait for the Council anymore. They weren't gods. They weren't guardians. They were politicians in robes, afraid of blood on their hands. But we had already drowned in it. So the order came in. Strike the Nargath. Total disablement. No survivors among command. They had 3 primary worlds and 7 outposts. In a normal war, we'd hit the outer rim first. We'd measure resistance, feel them out. But this wasn't a normal war. This wasn't about posturing. This was a message. We hit their capital first. I'll never forget the silence before the first strike. Every comm was muted, every screen dimmed. We floated just beyond their planetary detection range, cloaked by stealth tech we'd only used in Black Ops. I remember standing on the bridge of the Alba, looking at the curve of their world on the screen. Green atmosphere, blue oceans, beautiful even. Peaceful, if you didn't know better. But underneath that surface, weapons factories, slave camps, shipyards building the same kind of weapons that melted Rivenfall to glass. We didn't blink. At 0400 Standard Terran time, the first bombardment began. It started with a kinetic strike, rods of tungsten fired from orbit, each one dropping like a silent god of death. No explosions at first, just impact. The atmosphere itself screamed. Then came the railguns. Ships lined up like chess pieces, firing in waves. Every energy blast tore through defense platforms, ripped apart their orbital security like it was paper. Their satellites fried. Their comms died. And then we moved in. Boarding crews hit command ships. No negotiations, no prisoners, just evidence. We weren't monsters. We still believed in truth. But that truth had to be earned, and sometimes it came out of blood. I led the third boarding party onto the Nargath flagship, Kor Thazal. Big beast of a ship, covered in rust-colored armor and decorated with trophies. Bones, skulls, metal plates etched with names of dead enemies. It wasn't just a warship. It was a statement. And that made us furious. We went in hard, cutting through bulkheads, breaching the central deck, clearing every room with method and fury. The Nargath were tough, I'll give them that. 9 feet tall, all muscle and hate. But they didn't know us. Not really. They'd fought humans before, but not like this. Not with fire in our lungs and ghosts at our backs. When we reached the command throne, their warlord stood waiting. His armor was blood red, his eyes full of smug pride. Until he saw the insignia on our shoulders, the black star, the Rivenfall sigil. He flinched, He tried to speak, some nonsense about misunderstanding, about business, but DeSalle didn't let him finish. She walked up, looked him in the eye, and said just one thing. "Say the name." He didn't, so she pulled the trigger. That day Nargath Prime fell. The rest of their empire cracked in days. Outposts fled, commanders abandoned posts. Some begged for mercy, some tried to fight. None succeeded. Every broadcast from their collapsing empire was filled with the same question. Why is Earth doing this? As if they didn't already know. The footage of Rivenfall was broadcast again. This time, across every channel in the known systems. The crater, the ash fields, the charred bones, the school walls still standing, melted from the outside in. We didn't speak over the footage. We didn't need to. The galaxy watched in silence. But the Nargath were just the beginning. Just one piece in the puzzle. Because the data we recovered from their command ship had names, locations, transactions. Turns out the weapons used on Rivenfall weren't just Nargath tech. They were manufactured under license from the Zarn Dominion, another empire hiding behind neutrality and trade agreements. The Zarn were old, rich, connected. They supplied to everyone, council allies, pirates, even the peacekeeping force. Always smiling, always clean. But blood money smells the same, no matter how pretty the words. And we had names now. Logs, signatures, shipment trails. Captain DeSalle stood on the bridge that night, staring at the map of the next targets. She turned to us, her voice low and steady. The galaxy thought we were weak. Let's remind them what it means to be human. And just like that, the next wave launched. Ships split from the main fleet, moving like claws in the dark. Stealth teams hunted the traitors in the trade guilds. Diplomats were exposed. Bankers arrested. Corrupt council members quietly disappeared. This wasn't just war, it was purging. Humanity wasn't asking for a seat at the galactic table anymore. We were flipping the table. And for the first time in thousands of years, the stars themselves were afraid. We started hearing it in whispers, in intercepted transmissions, from smugglers, spies, even high-ranking council members. The humans are coming. Not the Earth government, not the Terran Union, the humans, as if they finally realized what we really were. We weren't unified by a king or a planet. We were unified by memory, pain, justice. We didn't care if it took 100 years or 1,000 systems. We would find every hand that signed off on Rivenfall, and we'd cut it off. One by one. The word spread like smoke in a dry wind. By the time Earth's fleets reached the Zarn Dominion, the stars already whispered about us. Not in political meetings or quiet diplomacy sessions. No, it was in the underworld corridors, in late-night trader transmissions, in the frightened murmurs of planetary governors who never thought they'd see Earth rise like this. They stopped calling us humans. They called us the Black Sky. Because when the fleet moved in, that's all they saw above. Hundreds of thousands of black-armored ships blotting out their suns, their moons, their hopes. Every shadow in the sky became a symbol of what they feared most, a species that stopped asking for permission. The Zarn tried to do what any guilty power does when cornered. They denied everything. First, they blamed pirates. Then, rogue factories. Then, unauthorized third-party brokers. But Earth's intelligence teams had the receipts, signed trade agreements, encrypted comm logs, personal logs from Zarn ministers laughing about the fools of Rivenfall and how easily one colony could be erased. They didn't know those logs had survived. They didn't know that when the attack began, a single data buoy had launched itself deep into orbit, sending out encrypted packets every 10 seconds. One buoy, one miracle. That's all it took. When the first Earth warships appeared near Zarn space, the Dominion thought we'd negotiate. But we'd already tried that, for centuries. We sent them one message. It wasn't long. Just 2 words. We remember. Then came the fire. If the assault on the Nargath was a swift military strike, the Zarn campaign was different. It was surgical. We didn't just bomb their planets. We cracked their systems. Their banks collapsed first. Every Zarn credit tied to Earth or Terran-aligned colonies was frozen or wiped. Trade partners turned ghost. Entire corporations vanished overnight. The Dominion's economy screamed before a single missile dropped. And then the real storm came. Their outer defense rings were cut apart like old vines. The Zarn Navy tried to put up a show of strength, but their ships were built for intimidation, not war. They were covered in gold, encrusted in light displays, and bloated with decorative armor. They burned like kindling. I was there, aboard the ISS Dagger Point, part of Strike Wing Vulture. We weren't even in the first wave, just cleanup. But cleanup meant dealing with the escape ships. And that was worse in some ways. These weren't soldiers, they were nobles, bankers, CEO families, fleeing in yachts, cruise vessels, personal luxury transports. Some of those ships were bigger than our dreadnoughts, but not because of weapons, because of theaters, spas, gardens, whole levels designed just for comfort. We caught one ship trying to run through a mining corridor near Orion's Veil, the Golden Prism. I'll never forget that name. It came up on our radar, emitting civilian codes. The captain called for mercy, said they had children on board, diplomats, people of importance. We boarded, careful, cautious. And what we found? They weren't diplomats, they were celebrating, drinking champagne, eating exotic food, laughing about the human tantrum like it was a joke. Like Rivenfall was just a bump in the road, like we were dogs barking too loud. One of them, I still remember his face, stood up, glass in hand, and said, "If we knew killing one colony would get you this angry, we'd have done it sooner." He didn't get to say anything else. We didn't kill them. That would have been too easy. We recorded them. Every word, every laugh, every mocking comment, sent the footage to the Council, to the Zarn people, to the universe, let them see what their leaders really thought of peace. The reaction was immediate. Protests broke out across the Dominion, not just fear, shame, people demanding answers, demanding arrests. And when none came, they took matters into their own hands. Within 2 weeks, Zarn's own citizens overthrew the Central Council. Some say Earth helped. Maybe. Maybe not. But here's what we did do. We left, didn't nuke their cities, didn't occupy. We took their corrupted leaders, exposed the crimes, and left the people to clean their own house. It wasn't mercy, it was restraint. And that scared them more than fire ever could. Because now they knew humanity wasn't just mad. We were measured. We didn't want to burn the galaxy. We wanted to fix it. And if that meant cutting out the rot piece by piece, we'd do it without flinching. Other systems started shifting, fast. The Tirash Accord, once proud allies of the Nargath, suddenly disavowed all support. Their ambassador offered Earth a formal apology. Not because they cared, because they didn't want to be next. The Velari cluster, which once blocked Earth from trade routes, quietly opened their borders. And the Kreth Combine, a race of warriors who once mocked humans as soft meat, signed a non-aggression pact without being asked. The galaxy was changing. Not because we asked, but because they finally listened. But not everyone was ready to kneel, because deep beyond the edge of mapped space, something else was stirring. The Carnathi expanse, a hidden empire, ancient, silent. For centuries they stayed out of politics, hiding behind their black nebulae and distortion fields. No one knew how big they were, or how dangerous. Now, we had a reason to care. Because the last recovered log from Rivenfall, a blurry, corrupted visual, showed a symbol, just for a second, burned onto the side of a dropship. A spiral of blades around a black star. That symbol matched Carnathi war markings seen during the Blood Singularity conflicts over 400 years ago. Conflicts that were never officially documented. Because anyone who saw a Carnathi fleet back then didn't survive. The realization hit like ice. The ones who destroyed Rivenfall, the ones who turned children into shadows and left nothing but whispers. They weren't just pirates or arms dealers. They were something older, and they were watching, waiting, and now they knew we were coming. But so did we. Back aboard the Dagger Point, Captain Renna summoned the senior staff. She stood at the war table, red lights flickering across her face, and said, "This isn't over. It never was. Rivenfall was just the match. We're in a fire now. And the next enemy? They're not scared. Yet." She looked around the room. Pilots, engineers, tacticians, all of us hardened by what we'd seen. Then she said, "They wanted to wake the sleeping beast? Fine. Let them see what happens when Earth truly awakens." The Carnathi expanse wasn't on most star maps, not because people hadn't tried, but because ships that went in didn't come back. Even before Rivenfall, it was considered dead space, quiet, cold, and cursed, a place of black nebulae, drifting debris fields, and gravity wells that bent light like mirrors. Stories said it was haunted. Generations of pilots whispered about signals that screamed with no source, ships that vanished mid-transmission, strange lights that followed from behind but never showed up on radar. Now we knew those stories weren't myths, they were warnings. When we got orders to enter the expanse, the room went quiet. Not the scared kind of quiet, just the kind where everyone starts thinking a little deeper. Like you're standing at the edge of a cliff and someone just told you to jump, not because you have a choice, but because something on the other side needs to be stopped. Our orders were clear. Find the Carnathi, confirm their involvement in Rivenfall, eliminate their command structure. There were no politics anymore, no questions about treaties or council permission. After what we'd seen, the massacres, the arrogance, the utter lack of remorse, humanity wasn't waiting for invitations. We entered the expanse with a task force of 12,000 ships, just a fraction of the full fleet, but every one of them hand-picked. Stealth cruisers, long-range recon units, electronic warfare carriers, Black Ops dreadnoughts. The kind of ships Earth never admitted existed. Our ship, the Dagger Point, was one of the lead vanguards. We were equipped with multi-spectrum cloaks, radiation dampeners, and a crew that didn't flinch. Captain Renna briefed us before the jump. "This isn't a war zone," she said, voice low. "It's a graveyard. Treat it that way. Assume every flicker on your sensors is a trap. Don't chase ghosts. Don't get curious. Stay focused. Stay alive." We dropped into the expanse just past the starless border, where light itself looked thinner. And I swear, the silence hit instantly. Not just the absence of sound, but the absence of everything. No comm chatter from nearby ships, no background radiation, no drifting signal noise, just cold space and shadows that seemed to move when you weren't looking. The first thing we saw was a wreck, a massive cargo ship, non-human in design, split clean down the middle and drifting through a field of black dust. Its hull had deep claw-like gouges, as if something ripped it open from the inside. There were no signs of life, no power, no distress signals. We scanned it anyway. Inside, the only thing still running was a repeating message. Short, broken, scrambled from damage, but we pieced it together. "They see what you fear." That was it. Over and over. It should have sounded like nonsense, but it didn't, not in that place. A week into the expanse, our crew started to change. Not visibly, not right away, but you could feel it. People stopped talking as much. Laughter disappeared. Even the jokes in the mess hall started sounding flat and empty. One of our engineers, Harlan, began having nightmares. Woke up screaming in the middle of the night. Said he saw faces looking back from his diagnostic screens. When we checked the logs, no faces, just static. 2 days later, he walked into the airlock and tried to vent himself into space. He was stopped, restrained, and sedated. But his last words? They whispered Rivenfall. The doctors tried to explain it. Stress, long hours, deep space paranoia. They said it was normal, part of the job. But even the medical officer looked like he didn't believe himself. The truth. The Carnathi weren't just hiding in the expanse. They were watching. They didn't need scouts. They didn't need radar. They had systems here. Biological networks, we learned later. Organic listening posts hidden in asteroid fields, pulsing with neural signals instead of radio waves. Ships weren't just being tracked. They were being read. We were being studied the second we entered their domain. And we made our first mistake on day 13. One of our long-range scouts, Vortex Echo, picked up what looked like a distress beacon, a Terran signature, decades old, from a missing science vessel lost over 40 years ago. It shouldn't have been here. We argued about it. Half the command staff said it was bait. The other half said if there were survivors, we owed it to them. In the end, the captain made the call. We sent in 2 destroyers and a recovery team. They landed on what looked like a shattered moon, a dead rock surrounded by metal debris. The beacon was real. We traced it to a broken hull, half buried in rock, like it had crash-landed. The team entered the remains of the science ship. What they found inside, it was human. Or it used to be. Bodies frozen in place, mouths open in screams. Some had clearly tried to claw their way out. But others had symbols etched into their skin, not written, carved, carefully, like someone had taken their time. Some were missing organs, removed cleanly, no signs of struggle, not harvested, studied. There were no logs left, no data, only a message scrawled on the main console in dried blood. We never left. That's when the ambush hit. A Carnathi warship, black as obsidian, uncloaked less than 30,000 kilometers from our task force. No warning, no engine flare. Just there. It didn't fire. It didn't move. It just sat in space, staring. And then every ship in our fleet received the same transmission. Not audio, not video. A feeling. A sharp pressure in the back of the skull. A cold wave behind the eyes. And then images, flashes, Rivenfall, burning. But from above, from orbit, seen through alien eyes. They were showing us what they had done. They were proud. And then a voice, in a language we didn't recognize, but somehow understood. You reached too far. This galaxy was never yours. Then the ship vanished, folded into a crack of space like it had never existed. We tried to pursue, tracked the jump vector. Nothing. Just black. The fleet regrouped, angry, unsettled, but more determined than ever. Because now we weren't just looking for confirmation. We were hunting monsters. And worse, we had proof. Rivenfall wasn't random. It wasn't just about intimidation or power. It was a message from the Carnathi. Earth was rising too fast, spreading, touching sectors they considered sacred. So they made an example of us. And they did it deliberately. They thought we'd whimper, collapse, hide. Instead, we brought 700,000 warships into the void, and we weren't leaving without a reckoning. After the Carnathi ship disappeared, everything changed. We weren't just soldiers anymore. We were witnesses. And the thing we witnessed wasn't war. It was something colder, older, something that had been waiting in the dark while the rest of the galaxy played politics. The command on Earth didn't waste time. As soon as they received the logs from the expanse, the images, the psychic transmission, the mutilated science team, they activated Protocol Ashfall. It wasn't public. Most people had never even heard the name. It was a contingency created long ago for something humanity hoped would never be real. A hostile, hidden species capable of psychological warfare and long-term manipulation across the galaxy. The Carnathi weren't just invaders. They were engineers of fear. Our orders changed. We were no longer just tasked with engaging targets. Now, we were to find their home system, their central hive, their control point. Whatever place was giving the orders, whatever shadow kept pulling the strings, we were to find it and destroy it. They wanted to erase us from memory. Now we were going to erase them from history. The first step? Follow the path of the destroyed. In old archives from forgotten colonies, we found a pattern. Places that had mysteriously gone silent over the last few hundred years. No official wars, no rebellions, just dead zones. Entire systems marked as uninhabitable, then left alone. There were 17 of them. All around the expanse, it was a ring, a perimeter. The Carnathi had been building a noose. Every time a civilization got too close to their edge, it vanished. Quietly, discreetly, controlled extinction, enough to avoid suspicion, enough to avoid attention. Until Rivenfall. And the difference between the others and us? We fought back. We started with System 9 Red, codenamed Whale Spire, once a Terran research outpost, wiped clean 82 years ago. Now it was just rocks and clouds, or so we thought. The moment our recon drones entered the system, they went blind. No signal, no return, just vanished. But we didn't lose them to weapons or jammers. We lost them to silence, not quiet, not peaceful. Silence like a scream with no air behind it. Captain Rena decided to lead the fleet in personally. She brought in the Dagger Point, 3 escort destroyers, and a recon carrier with AI-assisted scanners. What we found? It was a graveyard. Dozens of ships. All kinds. Terran, Zarn, Nargath, even a few council-linked models. All dead, floating, drifting like bones in space. Some had holes melted through the center. Others were fused together, literally merged, metal twisted like wet clay. We found bodies, too. Human bodies. But not rotted. Preserved, as if something had frozen them the second they died. Their faces stuck in expressions of terror. No sign of radiation, no heat damage. Just emptiness. It didn't make sense. There was no weapon on record that did this. No tech that precise. No logic to the carnage. But then our long-range scanners picked up something behind the third moon of Whalespire 4. It wasn't a ship. It was a station. Organic in shape, half buried in the rock like a tumor. Black and pulsing faintly, as if breathing. It had no engines, no visible weapons, but its surface emitted low-frequency waves that made our skin crawl. We scanned it. Nothing came back. Then we pinged it, just once. And that was enough. The entire station came alive. Tendrils of black metal uncoiled from the surface. Eyes opened, actual eyes, grown from tissue and tech. They blinked in unison, all aimed at us. Then a signal hit our ship. No message, no voice, just images. But not like before. Not shared memories. These were personal, private. Each crew member saw something different. I saw my brother, who died back on Europa Station. He was standing in the control room, face calm, eyes hollow. He said my name, then bled from his mouth until his skin cracked like stone. Another crew member collapsed, sobbing. She saw her mother's funeral, played backward. One pilot screamed that he saw himself floating outside the ship, frozen, watching the rest of us from beyond. It wasn't just fear. It was surgical emotional targeting. The station was alive, and it was inside our heads. Captain Rena ordered a full retreat from the moon's orbit. But it was too late. 2 of our destroyers stopped responding. They didn't explode. They just powered down. Drifted away like they'd forgotten what movement meant. No signs of attack. Just sudden emptiness. We tried to retrieve them, but something in that moon. It bent space around itself. Our tethers wouldn't reach. Our navigation readings began looping, like we weren't in real space anymore. Then a new ship appeared. Not from warp, not from behind a planet. Just there. A Carnathi battleship. Bigger than anything we'd ever seen. Twice the size of our heaviest carriers. Its hull looked grown, not built. Sections breathing like lungs, ribs visible along its spine. No engines, no weapons, just presence. And behind it, dozens more, uncloaking one by one, silent, watching. We should have been terrified. But something happened in that moment. The dagger point didn't run. We fired the first shot. A precision rail round straight into the belly of the Carnathi flagship. And to everyone's shock, it ripped through, no shields, no countermeasures. It tore open the hull, and the ship screamed. Not metal groaning, a real scream, like a wounded animal howling through space. The sound cut through our comms like a blade. But we didn't stop. All ships opened fire. Laser storms, missile barrages, kinetic rounds, everything we had. And for once, the Carnathi bled. 2 of their ships shattered. 1 broke apart and disintegrated into dust. Whatever they were, however ancient or powerful, they weren't gods. They could be killed. The message was clear. We weren't the ones trapped in the expanse anymore. They were. And Earth had just found the crack in their armor. The dagger point led the fleet back to high orbit, regrouping with the others. Damage was minimal. Losses were light. But morale? Morale was a supernova, because now we knew the truth. The Carnathi could hide behind their mind tricks, their silence, their whispers and illusions. But when it came to real fire, real war, real pain, they weren't ready for us. Captain Rena sent a message back to Earth, short, like all the best ones. We found the nest. We can burn it. The Carnathi made one mistake. They let us hurt them. It didn't matter that it was just one ship, one scream, one crack in the shadows. They bled, and we saw it. That changed everything. Word traveled fast. Every fleet still stationed near the expanse received the same message from Captain Rena. Carnathi forces vulnerable to sustained kinetic and plasma barrages. Proceed with strike-level aggression. No quarter. It was the green light everyone had been waiting for. Earth's command didn't hesitate. The full fleet, 700,000 ships, began shifting position. The armadas spread across systems slowly reoriented their engines. What had once been quiet, orbiting formations turned toward one singular direction, the heart of the expanse. No more scouting. No more watching. This was the march. The first step was building a corridor through the black nebulae, something the galaxy had never done. The expanse was infamous for destroying sensors and folding spatial maps, making long-range navigation almost impossible. Ships would get lost in gravitational eddies or turn in circles without realizing it. But now, Earth wasn't just bringing firepower. We brought calculation. Every ship along the edge of the expanse was ordered to begin mapping. Our AI networks worked in tandem. Quantum cores, deep space drones, gravitational sonar, it all came together to build a model of the void. We called it the thread. A narrow, twisted path through the chaos. It looked more like a vine than a road. Bending, wrapping, sometimes dipping through folds of space that made your head spin. It was barely wide enough for a cruiser. We sent the first vanguard, 300 ships, small, fast, deadly. Our mission? Clear the way for the full fleet. I was still aboard the Dagger Point, now promoted to squadron leader. Our crew had grown colder. Not in a bad way. We were focused, sharper, like blades freshly whetted on stone. Everyone knew what was coming. We weren't here to survive. We were here to finish. As we moved deeper through the thread, we passed things I still don't have words for. Dead stars that hummed, gas clouds that screamed when you scanned them. One asteroid that pulsed like a beating heart, dripping red ice into the void. The Carnathi hadn't just made this place a trap, they shaped it, twisted the laws of physics with biotech and gravity folding. This was their nest, and it hated light. But we kept going. 2 days in, we reached Vehara, a Carnathi fortress moon. It wasn't a base in the traditional sense. It was a hollow moon, half covered in black chitin, with glowing veins of green biolight running along the surface. It rotated slowly, surrounded by floating chunks of stone tethered by energy bridges. Their ships docked like insects to a hive, legs locked into sockets that pulsed with heat. It was beautiful. And we were going to destroy it. The order was simple. Take it offline. Permanently. No diplomacy. No warning. We opened with a triple barrage from our heaviest kinetic platforms. Solid metal rods, massed at hypersonic speeds, slammed into the outer shell. The surface cracked, then buckled. Chitin peeled away like shattered bark. Their defenses activated fast. Flesh cannons that shot acidic energy bolts, mines that hissed across space, spore clouds that tried to cling to our hulls and eat through armor. But we adapted faster. Laser walls fried the spores mid-flight. Shield oscillators deflected acid. And for every Carnathi weapon that emerged, we responded with something crueler. Because here's the thing. Humans aren't just warriors, we're learners. You hit us once, we build a counter. You try again, we improve it. You push harder, we break you. Within 15 minutes, the fortress was in flames. Chunks of molten debris floated in orbit. Their ships tried to flee, but they had nowhere to go. The vanguard caught them, pulled them back with tractor snares, and burned them into silence. We found their command node deep in the core of the fortress, a sphere. Alive. It pulsed when we entered, sent out waves that made our ears bleed and our vision blur. Then it spoke, not in words, in emotion, regret. No, not regret. Disgust. As if it couldn't believe we'd made it this far, as if we were unworthy of even being hated. It tried to manipulate us again. We all felt it. Visions of Rivenfall, of the screams, of people we lost. It thought it could break us. But this time? We smiled. We let the AI core burn it with precision lasers until it stopped pulsing. That was the end of Vehara, the first Carnathi stronghold in the expanse. Gone. And once we lit that fire, the rest of the galaxy watched. Even the Council, those pompous diplomats who once ignored Earth, issued a statement. We advise all empires to support Earth's efforts in containing the Carnathi threat. Contain? That wasn't the plan. We weren't here to contain. We were here to finish what they started. With the path cleared, the rest of the fleet began to arrive. Massive carriers, orbital bombardment ships, dreadnoughts that looked more like floating cities than vessels. They came in waves, each one adding more pressure to the Carnathi's thin line of defense, and still, they didn't speak. No messages, no parley, just fear. You could feel it in the way they fought. Erratic, desperate. The elegance we'd seen before was gone. They knew the tide had turned. Our scientists began studying the remains. What they found was horrifying. The Carnathi weren't a species in the traditional sense. They were a design, a biological program, grown over eons, blending organic and machine, controlled by a central will. Not a king, not an emperor, a hive mind. And Rivenfall, that wasn't just destruction, it was a ritual. They fed on pain, on memory, on legacy. They erased civilizations not just to eliminate threats, but to consume identity. Make sure no one remembered them. Make sure no name echoed after the fire. But Earth had changed the rules. We didn't die quietly. We roared. And now we were at their gates. Captain Rena stood before the entire fleet during the final briefing. Her image flickered on every screen, from small corvette bridges to massive dreadnought hulls. She didn't shout. She didn't wave flags. She just said, "They thought Rivenfall would be forgotten. Let's make sure the only thing forgotten is them." The next step? The core. The Carnathi homeworld. We had coordinates. We had a fleet. And for the first time in history, they had fear. The Carnathi homeworld was nothing like we expected. We thought it would be a fortress, a dark throne surrounded by weapons and death. Instead, it was a shadow, a cold, quiet place that seemed almost abandoned. From orbit, it looked like a black marble, smooth and cracked, with faint green veins running across its surface like scars. No atmosphere we could detect, no signs of life on scanners. The entire planet was dead, or so it seemed. But we knew better. This was their heart, their core, the source of everything we'd faced. As the fleet formed into assault formations, the tension was nearly unbearable. Every ship held its breath. Every pilot felt the weight of thousands of lives on their shoulders. The ghosts of Rivenfall rode with us. Captain Rena addressed the fleet one last time. "Today we fight not just for Earth, or for the colonies lost. We fight for every soul they tried to erase, every name they sought to silence. This ends now." We had one shot, one chance. The plan was brutal but precise. First, a wave of electronic warfare ships would launch a massive EMP barrage designed to disable the Carnathi's biological tech and communications. Then, the kinetic bombardment, tens of thousands of rods dropping like comets, striking the surface with enough force to crack the planet's crust. Finally, the ground forces, human special operations teams, drop pods, and drones designed for one purpose: destroy the hive mind itself. As the EMP began, silence fell. No signals, no responses. The planet's surface flickered, shadows dancing in the electromagnetic storm. Then the rods started to fall. The bombardment was terrifying to watch. Each impact sent shockwaves through the planet, rippling like a pulse across the fleet's sensor grids. For hours, the sky above the Carnathi world was a rain of fire. But then the unexpected happened. The planet fought back. Beneath the surface, deep within the cracks, massive structures began to rise, organic towers, like spires of black glass, glowing with sickly green light. The hive was alive. It was waking. From the depths came swarms of creatures, half machine, half insect, all deadly. They flooded the orbit, cutting through ships with lethal precision. The battle erupted. Our fleet was caught in a storm of death and bioplasma fire. Cruisers exploded, carrier decks burned, pilots screamed over comms. But we held, because we knew what was at stake. Amid the chaos, the Dagger Point launched its strike teams. Drop pods pierced the atmosphere, hurtling toward the glowing towers. On the ground, it was worse than any horror story. The Carnathi creatures moved like shadows, silent, swift, merciless. They didn't just fight, they absorbed. They consumed technology and flesh alike, growing stronger with every kill. Our teams pushed forward, breaking through defenses with plasma cutters and pulse rifles. The hive mind's control node was buried deep beneath the largest tower. We fought through twisted corridors, walls alive with pulsing veins and chittering sounds. When we reached the core chamber, we found it. A massive pulsating orb, suspended in midair, surrounded by tendrils of black biometal. It was the brain of the Carnathi hive. It pulsed with a terrifying intelligence. Our lead operative, Lieutenant Cara Dune, approached with a device designed to disrupt its neural patterns. As she activated it, the hive screamed, a psychic roar that rattled the minds of everyone on the planet. Towers shook, Creatures wailed. The Hive began to collapse. Above, the fleet intensified its fire. We poured everything into the planet, missiles, plasma, kinetic rounds, until finally the core shattered. A blinding flash engulfed the planet. For a moment, everything went silent. Then, the planet began to break apart. Tectonic plates ruptured. Volcanoes erupted with bioplasma fire. The black spires shattered into dust. The Hive was dead. The Carnathi Empire was no more. As the shockwave rippled through space, the fleet withdrew. We were battered. We were broken. But we were victorious. Captain Rena's final message was simple. We came for justice. We leave with peace. The stars that had once been dark with Carnathi shadows now held a new light. The galaxy was safe, for now. But as we left the expanse behind, I looked back at the burning planet. And I wondered, what other shadows waited in the dark? The Carnathi were gone. Their black world shattered into drifting fragments, scattered like forgotten nightmares across the void. We had won. But victory wasn't quiet. It wasn't a moment of celebration or peace. It was a heavy silence. A silence filled with loss, with memories, with questions no one dared ask. As the fleet regrouped and prepared to head home, I stood on the bridge of the Dagger Point, watching the remnants of the Carnathi world slowly cool in the distance. The stars felt different now. Darker, heavier, because we had paid a price. Thousands of ships lost, countless brave souls burned away in the storm of war, and yet even in that darkness there was something else. A faint glimmer. Hope. Captain Rena gathered us all for a final briefing before the fleet dispersed. She spoke with that calm, steady voice that never broke, even when the universe was falling apart around us. This was never just about revenge, she said. It was about survival, about proving that humanity will not be erased without a fight. Her words echoed across the channels, heard by every ship, every crew. She reminded us that the galaxy was watching. Not just enemies, but friends, allies, those who once doubted our place among the stars. We showed them who we are, she said. Not just fighters, but survivors. Guardians, the ones who carry the flame of hope in the darkest night. As the fleet broke formation and began their journeys home, the weight of what we'd done settled on everyone. I thought about Rivenfall, the colony that started this war, the families who never came back, the children who never grew up. We'd brought justice, yes. But justice didn't bring them back. It never would. But what it did do was send a message to every corner of the galaxy. We remember. We remember because we are human, because we carry the pain of loss like a shield, because we fight not just with weapons, but with our hearts. As months passed, the political landscape shifted. The Council reformed, humbled by the scale of Earth's power and resolve. New treaties were forged, not from weakness, but from respect. Humanity was no longer a curiosity or an annoyance. We were a force, a storm. And as the fleet returned to their home systems, new opportunities opened. Trade routes once closed were now gateways. Old enemies became cautious allies. And a new chapter began. Back on Earth, life continued. Scarred, changed, but alive. Families rebuilt. Children learned about the stars, about the wars fought in their names. And somewhere deep in the archives, the story of 700,000 warships moving as one became legend. A legend of fire and fury, of darkness met with light, of a species that refused to be forgotten. Because in the end, that's what it means to be human, to fight, to endure, to shine. The stars await, and so do we.